Now, based on Justin's recent release of documents, an expert I spoke to says Blake will fold. It's the only way to save face. So I think really the countdown is on to see Blake and Ryan eat some humble pie.
We just broke a shocking story. There is a rift, and I think that is an understatement of a word, a rift between Taylor Swift and Blake Lively. Taylor feels like she's been used.
Yeah, used in the middle of Blake Lively's war with Justin Baldoni. And there's certain things that that we know Blake has said about Taylor in reference to that battle that do not sit well with Taylor at all. The big one, dragons.
Yeah.
What happened was more of a happenstance meeting between Taylor and Justin, and Taylor, well, I'd say happenstance. Taylor thinks it was done intentionally
by Blake. So what happened was there was a 2-hour meeting with Blake, Justin Baldoni, and Ryan Reynolds. At the end of the meeting, that was the time Blake told Taylor to come over. And she believes, we're told, that Blake set her up and wanted her to come in when Justin was still there to show Blake's power.
Right.
And so
which is how Justin received it. He said that in his lawsuit.
But Blake certainly made it seem that way with the text to Justin. And I think, honestly, that text to Justin is saying, look at the power I have.
Right.
I have Taylor Swift.
And
Taylor started to ask questions, we're told, and she's found out that Blake, according to our sources, has been name-dropping Taylor to kind of, flex.
Sort of leveraging Taylor in specifically in one instance, telling an actress that she had been cast by Taylor. And we're told that Taylor had nothing to do with casting anybody.
I hear that Taylor may have had some influence in getting
Yes, she did. Yeah, I know. I don't even know if I'm meant to be saying it, but I'm saying it. Yeah, she was a helpful part of the process of the audition, which I found out later after I got it, and that rocked my world. Yeah. I have no words.
Blake's entitlement and demands know no bounds. She has stated through her lawyers that she does not want Justin's lawyer to depose her due to unspecified comments he made on the case. When pushed by Justin's team to clarify what these comments were, Blake and her team refused to do so. But thankfully, a judge mentioned today that she is not allowed to choose who deposes her. The best man for the job should be able to do it. But her request is very telling. She is terrified of being grilled by a competent and effective lawyer, something she appears to be quite unfamiliar with because her lawyers are just as duplicitous as she is. They keep complaining about Justin's lawyer speaking to the media, saying that lawyers are not allowed to speak to the media because of this or that. Blake's team has clearly been colluding with the media, but they're trying to pretend that that's not the same thing as a lawyer speaking to the media. That's bullshit. And it's kind of like a distinction without a difference, because in both cases you have Blake's team and Justin's team speaking to the media. It doesn't matter the role of the person doing the speaking. And it's clear they know and she knows she will not be able to handle the pressure, and that her many lies and distortions will not withstand Brian Friedman's clinical scrutiny, and she will fall apart. She is all but admitting that in this request to not be deposed by Justin's lead counsel.
I have been a licensed attorney for around 10 years now, and I have never heard of any witness being deposed having any choice at all as to who deposes them. Like, that's an insane ask. What's more likely, in my opinion, is Lively may have told her lawyers point blank, just, I'm not doing a deposition with Friedman. And her lawyers may have told her, but you don't really have any say in that. You kind of have to do it. And she may have just said in response, I don't care. Tell the other side that I'm not doing it. In other words, Blake Lively might actually be what is commonly referred to in litigation as a nightmare client. But when it's the plaintiff that is trying to get out of it, courts are going to be especially judgmental because they're the one that dragged the defendant into court in the first place. You can't drag them in and then try to say, oh, no, not me, leave me alone. This does appear to be a score for Team Justin, at the very least on the PR front. And truthfully, my guess is that in the litigation front, that's also going to be a win for them as well.
That is absolutely not how it works. This was a major misstep, in my opinion, because it shows either a bit of weakness, fear, or entitlement. There's really no other way to look at it. And if it were to be granted in this case, it would be hard for me not to believe this is some kind of special treatment. And I think it would be inappropriate and completely unfair. A seasoned litigator who loves getting in the scuffle, who loves publicly talking about a case, who probably loves going after giant celebrities, representing them and suing them and defending against them. In my opinion, this gives him uber confidence. He loves this. He loves the fact that he knows now Blake Lively does not want him to depose her. But he's going to come in there knowing she hates every second of this. She doesn't want this, which gives him more power, more leverage in the situation. And if you're Baldoni and the Wayfarer defendants, this has got to give you more confidence as well.
What more proof do you need to realize Blake's entire case is bullshit and has been from the beginning? It's all trumped up. There is no real substance to anything she claimed, and she has no real proof that Justin behaved inappropriately on set in a manner that she did not invite or was not also guilty of herself, and she also has zero proof of directives or active measures taken by Justin and his team to smear her. Every time I read through the timeline of these events, I am left infuriated and growling at the screen for how Blake hijacked this movie from Wayfarer and Justin over what we now know to be completely bogus sexual harassment allegations, especially when we get deep into the timeline of her demanding to edit the film and making her own competing cut. It's like, you know, she was never sexually harassed, and that this extortion scheme was always the plan, and that she began seeding the sexual harassment lies and entrapment early on, like her not wanting to meet with the intimacy coordinator and then forcing Justin to explain the intimacy coordinator notes to her alone at her home, which she later demonized him for doing. At one point, it even becomes clear Blake is fishing for incidents she can use as violations against these men in her premeditated scheme, and it's a shame that Justin and crew didn't realize this sooner. But that's because they approached the situation in good faith and expected that they were getting the same in return. The craziest thing that I feel like everyone is kind of missing a little bit is that it's so clear Blake carried through on her dragon threat texts, just like Justin and his team noted in their documentation recently. Blake literally warned Justin early on that if he didn't play ball and do things her way, she would unleash her dragons to basically pressure him into doing her bidding. We just had no clue, and I'm sure Justin had no clue what that would entail. Now we know. That's what the sexual harassment claims were. They were the vehicle through which Ryan Reynolds decided to punish Justin for not acquiescing to his wife's every tiny demand. And more importantly, it also became the vehicle through which they commandeered the film from Justin once he showed signs he would oppose her. And I'm talking the mildest bit of opposition he gave her, first on the rooftop scene, following which she threatened him, and then on a couple of other things like her wardrobe. He gave her a little pushback on that. It upset her. He then gave her a little pushback on the dailies, and that was after she left for break. And I know that second time he denied her the dailies around July 20th, it set her off. So it was all a part of the plan all along, which they spelled out to Justin in pre-production. And remember, she had a demand earlier that Wayfarer and Sony didn't want to agree to, which was a producer credit. They wouldn't agree to a producer credit because apparently a producer credit entails a lot, which they were not asking of her, but they settled for giving her an executive producer credit, which is basically to acknowledge her celebrity stature. And it was basically a generic in name only sort of producer credit. They were not expecting her to do anything beyond basically just being being an actor and then having the executive producer credit. So that was the first time she demanded something in negotiations for a contract. They denied her. I believe the ball started rolling from there, her fishing for a way she could wrestle this movie out of their hands because they wouldn't give her what she wanted at the onset, which was a producer credit. And remember, this is what she ended up strong-arming in the end, a producer credit plus the prestigious PGA mark on that producer credit. She strong-armed that with threats at the end. So it was all a part of the plan, which they spelled out to Justin in pre-production. So surely a judge will see that the sexual harassment allegations are merely the vehicle through which Blake chose to make good on her threats to Justin in that pre-production text with the help of her husband. It's all spelled out right there in writing in that text early on. Then she proceeded to follow through on that threat by destroying this man and stealing his movie. Because Blake is a moron, she undoubtedly had a mastermind guiding her through all of this. Someone who is even more calculating and ruthless than she is, which would be Ryan Reynolds. He is a veteran in stealing movies from directors. Ryan was going to make this particular movie Blake's thing so that she could keep pace with him in his career success, because as Ryan likely knows, Blake is vapid, untalented, washed up, and has an insane sense of self-importance that far exceeds anything she's achieved in life. Therefore, she had to lie, extort, and exploit her way into a producer credit while stealing the intellectual property of a genuinely talented filmmaker who had a big, vulnerable heart and a great vision. Ryan had come to her rescue and was determined to save her from irrelevance in Hollywood or from being typecasted in laughably unserious films like A Simple Favor or Age of Adeline or some shit. And I think Ryan was desperate to take over this movie for Blake because it's very likely that no one really wants to work with her behind the scenes. She was a shoo-in for A Simple Favor 2 because she had already starred in the first movie, but we see the sequel is a straight-to-streaming flick with no theatrical release. Ryan needed to pull a Hail Mary for Blake's joke of a career, since we all know she peaked in Gossip Girl, which is almost 20 years ago, and he was going to do this by making It Ends With Us her big, standout, serious role, getting her a PGA producer credit and hopefully the rights to direct the subsequent films in this series, since if all went according to plan, the original director would be disgraced. And I bet there is evidence of this somewhere in their communications. The extortion scheme, I mean. Just like Blake's moronic Kelce threat, I'm positive she has immortalized more of their scheme in writing because she's not bright enough to realize you don't spell out extortionary threats in writing that could potentially later be used against you as evidence. We just need to get to the discovery phase, and hopefully Brian Friedman can eat them both alive. He seems pretty game, and I love that about him. We also know for a fact Blake began overstepping and threatening her way into more and more control of the movie in pre-production before any incidents even arose that she could claim were sexual harassment. She made a few on-set complaints in late May, but any reasonable person can see there's no there. She did this in a little meeting she demanded. One was about the sexy comment Justin made to her, which is discredited by the simple fact that she's a fucking hypocrite. Not only did she set the precedent for this language being used to describe her character's wardrobe, but we have text message and video proof of her doing so. 2 occasions in which she referred to items of her character's wardrobe as sexy, and in the text she expressed that it was the aim of her wardrobe choices for them to be sexier. So that complaint she made on set doesn't hold weight. And just a side note here, we also have proof of Justin literally adopting Blake's language, which we were all suspecting anyway in multiple instances, like when he used the word sexy to describe her wardrobe. We knew he was adopting her language because she had previously referred to her wardrobe as sexy multiple times. So we have this text where he thanks Blake flat out for giving him his new favorite word, that word being sparkly. That's just adorable. So when he heard Blake using certain words or making certain jokes or telling personal stories, Justin thought it was okay to do the same because this is how humans socialize. She even told him he was safe speaking with her, which turned out to be a heinous lie when he accidentally used the word fun instead of exciting when he was speaking to her. And what you'll see is that Justin is very cognizant of not offending Blake in any way and bending over backwards not to do so, and even panicking before their meeting about her wardrobe, saying he was fucking terrified of saying the wrong thing. Because Blake is so difficult and such a bully, she was impossible to please. And in fact, she manipulated him into letting his guard down around her and then used it against him as a malicious narcissist would. Then the second complaint that she mentioned in that little meeting, Jamie Heath showing her that 1-second clip of his wife and baby post-birth. What a monstrous man. He did not show her pornography, and he was only showing this birthing video as a visual representation of what they wanted to aim for with the birthing scene. He did not just randomly walk up to her in an effort to prank her or horrify her by showing her his nude wife, as Blake is implying. He walked up to her with good intentions and trying to show her an example of what they were trying to achieve visually with a simulated birthing scene. And although she may not have wanted to see the video, I can even grant her that it was shown to her with good intent and was immediately withdrawn when she said she would watch it later. How can you be painting this as a nefarious incident where he sexually harassed you? This was not pornography. She had to trump it up and distort it and misrepresent it because she has no real proof of sexual harassment. The final thing Blake complained about on set was the first and second AD, who were both women, and both of whom were fired because of Blake. Are you keeping track yet? That's 4 people we have confirmed that Blake fired. 4 working class people simply trying to do their job that this evil, self-involved, elitist bully had fired from their fucking job and replaced with her and her husband's friends, such as the editor and composer from Ryan's movies. Justin also made a point of conveying the Sony exec told Justin that Blake did not want to file anything about these complaints formally because she knew how clownish these complaints would sound. The Sony exec also said there was nothing sexual in nature in her complaints. Blake didn't add on all of her lies about every interaction she ever had with Justin until she was home over the break with her demented husband with some copies of the dailies that they wrested out of Justin's reluctant hands. Did you also happen to notice that Justin and his team apologized for the 3 complaints Blake brought to light on set? Did you also happen to notice they apologized and acquiesced to her 17 demands when she trumped up even more complaints over the writer's strike break? They accommodated her at every end. They acquiesced her at every end. What is there to complain about? They did all they could to accommodate her when she made complaints on set. And mind you, just because someone makes complaints on set or accuses someone of sexual harassment does not mean something sexually harassing occurred. In this particular case, it comes down to the credibility of the person making the accusations, because we know for a fact she was commandeering on set and being manipulative and threatening. So now she has brought all of her allegations into question, and it will just have to be hashed out in court with a jury and a judge. So just because someone claims they were sexually harassed does not mean they were. But did you also happen to notice she didn't mention anything in these 3 complaints on set about him kissing her too long in a scene or improvising kisses? Although those scenes had already been filmed, if they were truly bothersome to her, she would have mentioned them on set in this little pathetic meeting. She didn't mention them until after the writer's strike when she and her husband were cooking up this bloated list of 17 provisions. That is something she fabricated completely, which Justin and his team claims the video footage will prove. And even before this little meeting came about, Blake had gotten sick and took several days off and basically overanalyzed these little tiny moments into complaints, which led to the meeting and then which ultimately led to 2 women being fired. So she was complaining about everything on that set, not just sexual harassment. She is extremely problematic. Also important to note, before she went on the writer's strike, 0 intimate scenes had been filmed. Only 1 nude scene had been filmed with Blake, and it was a scene she wrote and that she created and that she directed the action for herself. And there were only 2 kissing scenes before the strike, and both of them were improvised. and in one of them, Blake was the one improvising kisses, according to Justin. And it's important to note that the only reason Blake didn't have a signed nudity writer by the time the writer's strike came around is because she refused to sign the one that Wayfarer sent her at the beginning of filming. For her to demand a nudity writer before she films any of these scenes when she was already given one, do you realize how duplicitous that is? I go into detail about why the 17 provisions in her return to work document are totally fraudulent and misleading later in this video, and I also discussed it in my last video where I roughly broke down the timeline of the case. I'm just so disgusted by how all of this went down, honestly. Blake herself is guilty of most of the things she has accused Justin of, and in some cases much worse, like her Kelce threat. But for some reason, people don't think it matters because she's a female. So if Justin held Blake or Ryan to their own standards, Blake could also be accused of sexual harassment. So could Ryan, for that matter. In an early text exchange with Justin, he very weirdly goes off into this unfunny rift that would be his taint. So it is completely laughable and hypocritical for a couple as derogatory and foul-mouthed as Blake and Ryan to cry about inappropriate behavior on set, especially these innocuous moments, with Blake going around joking with Justin about her asshole and suppositories. They set the precedent of certain language and behavior on set and in private conversations early on, then turned around and tried to use that set culture against Justin, which just feels like premeditated entrapment to me. At this point, I don't give a damn whether Blake Lively thinks she was sexually harassed. She clearly wasn't, but I no longer give a fuck about anything she wanted to twist and use to victimize herself in this scenario. What she did to these men, Justin and Jamie, and let's not forget the PR team, Melissa and Jessica, and how she stole the movie is evil. It cannot be permitted. She cannot get away with it, and it's good that Karma already called during the press tour and whacked her ass upside the head for all the evil she had done behind the scenes with this movie. Pride goeth before a fall, and hers was lovely to witness. And it's so good that Justin finally grew a pair and stopped praising and placating this outrageous egotist. I'm so glad he finally decided to fight back when she tried to blame him for her own self-inflicted downfall. Just a few things that really blew my mind when reading through Justin's amended claim and his PDF of chronological evidence. The first one, holy shit. I knew about the statement Blake and Ryan tried to force Justin and Wayfarer to adopt in order to fall on the sword for Blake and save her reputation after she got all of the negative backlash for the way she was promoting the movie, but actually reading the statement blew my mind. And the snide part they tossed in there about man enough shows the bitterness with which this couple is operating. Make no mistake, they hate these men. Their vindictiveness and their derision towards Justin especially is so apparent, particularly with Nicepool and that violent murder, that you cannot help but harken back to a pair of school bullies, if not a fucking crime family, trying to ruin a man's life and reputation, and also threatening him continuously, and ultimately trying to force that very man they've already victimized to no end to take the fall for them once they fucked up in their desperate plot to make Blake appear talented or accomplished somehow. Blake being the face of this movie and its message was so inauthentic that she couldn't even control the outcome of the press tour because her message did not resonate with the message of the film. She didn't even read the book. It's so funny how things work out because she's going on flouncing around in all these pretty clothes and trying to be the face of this film when her heart wasn't in it. Justin's heart was in it, and that shone through during the press tour, and people commented about it. What took Blake down was her inauthentic message about this film because she was not the brains or the heart behind the film. She usurped that role from the filmmaker, and she got what she deserved for doing that. So that statement is so cringe and so evil and maniacal, I just cannot believe it. Then Justin also showed proof on the call sheets that not only did he operate by industry standards with a closed set, but he did it for every day of filming, not just the intimate scenes. It was standard operating procedure for him. So this is yet another thing that Blake blatantly and knowingly lied about. What also left me speechless was Justin providing proof that he reached out to some holistic health coach voodoo lady in order to help Blake with probiotics after she became ill for the umpteenth time, and Blake was ecstatic about it and said the woman was incredible. And he was doing this because he knew Blake was breastfeeding and the antibiotics she was taking might have upset the baby's microbiome as well as Blake's. It would take a truly depraved and hateful woman, which we have recently discovered Blake is, to twist this truly innocent and well-meaning connection into a backwards secret plot to link Blake up with a weight loss specialist because Justin thought Blake was so intolerably fat he just couldn't stand to look at her and needed her to be skinny, so he secretly set her up with a weight loss coach. As if Blake wouldn't notice if the woman began giving her a meal plan or a workout routine. Their lies are so outrageous and sinister. They're so desperate to paint Justin as someone he simply is not. Not only was he sweet enough to offer her help more than once when she became ill, but he also constantly went out of his way to reassure her and uplift her and elevate her throughout this production, quite undeservingly at times because she is about as mediocre as they come, but especially when he took the time to tell her no matter what she did or didn't do with regard to getting fit for the role, she would look amazing and he would accommodate her in any way she needed to feel comfortable and confident when filming the body/intimate scenes. He also proved that there was indeed a scene in the script where he was required to lift Blake and informed us there was footage of him practicing the lift with a stunt double. Also, I added a clip in one of my earlier videos where he did indeed lift Blake onto a counter in the movie, and all of these things would have an effect on his back injury, so I could see why he was trying to take precautions to avoid exacerbating that injury, for which he would actually later be hospitalized after filming completed. But of course, Blake used this incident of him inquiring about her weight for logistical and safety reasons as a pretext to accuse him of fat shaming her, thereby getting in her first fake violation of harassment on set. Which again, even if he did fat shame her, which he clearly didn't, this is yet another thing that Blake is guilty of herself, and I don't see anybody mentioning this. She was fat shaming herself in a long text message to Justin discussing her insecurities about her postpartum body and how she needed and felt obligated to get in shape for the movie. So make up your fucking mind, Blake. Are you overweight or not? Why is Justin a demon for being concerned about your weight and how it might leave him with a debilitating spinal injury, but it's okay for you to say your weight is a problem and that you don't want to shoot body scenes until you get it under control, thereby affecting the filming schedule of the entire production, which she did multiple times, by the way, at her leisure, costing them money. Also, what left my jaw on the floor is an email Justin presented that showed him speaking to the intimacy coordinator and CC'd Jamie Heath, breaking down the intimate scenes, in which you can tell he is extremely cognizant of Blake and her comfort and desiring that she approve all things they embark on in terms of on-screen intimacy. He makes certain the scenes are not graphic, and he suggests things he could do to achieve certain story beats, but qualified nearly everything he said by making it contingent on Blake's consent and comfortability. These are not the words of a predator looking to objectify or sexually exploit an actress through gratuitous intimate scenes in a movie. And what pisses me off is that there are plenty of male directors out here who do just that, such as Woody Allen, the man she defended, or like Stanley Kubrick. If you watch the movies of men like these, you will see what it looks like when a male director is objectifying a woman. And there is no question that Justin's movie and his vision for the movie and his wanting to concentrate on the female gaze does not compare to exploitative films like this in the least. I also love that Justin proved he was not legally obligated to follow certain COVID procedures as the protocols had expired, although he still acquiesced her request and had no intention of maliciously and secretly exposing her to COVID without her knowledge. What the hell would he or his film set gain from that, with the lead actress falling ill and delaying filming, which she did multiple times, by the way, because her and her baby kept falling ill. And each and every time, Justin expressed empathy and tried to connect her with multiple health coaches to help her recover. And they even had a special notice on the call sheet one day that said, be prepared to wear masks around the newborn babies, and this was early on before any of Blake's complaints. He also spelled out something else that seemed to get lost in the weeds, that Blake was legally obligated by SAG to continue filming during the strikes. She listed as one of her trumped up demands in that list of 30 items in her CRD complaint that Justin needed to agree that he would not ask her to cross any more picket lines. And that is just so fucking stupid, because not only was she required to finish filming, but Justin didn't even assert that she returned to film between June 14th, when she left as the picketing began, and June 27th, when the full production finally shut down. Despite it costing him significantly, as many of Blake's decisions did throughout her extortion, he made the costly decision to not film scenes with Blake during that period between June 14th and June 27th, and instead he went with the younger versions of the main characters, who both had great things to say about him afterwards. It left me screaming at my computer when I read all of the screenshots of the interviews the cast gave praising Justin and emphatically expressing how comfortable and safe the set was and how passionate Justin was about the message of this film. It completely and utterly exonerated him in my eyes and was proof positive that he not only ran his set according to industry standards, but that he went above and beyond to ensure that each cast member had a positive experience with him, including Blake, who he didn't realize was out to get him from the beginning. Furthermore, it is deeply unsettling that Blake used her influence and her lies about sexual harassment on the cast and the book's author after filming, meaning they all fell in love with Justin and his work ethic early on and throughout filming, but once Blake got her hands on them after filming, she got them to shun Justin and see him as a monster, basically. She then went a step further and orchestrated the marketing campaign in such a way that it would benefit her deceptive narrative of Onset abuse and make Justin appear to be the problematic one, public-facing. This is all more proof that Blake is a reprehensible hack and a liar. She is a bad faith actor who got beside herself with trying to destroy a man and steal his movie. It was overkill. And arguably, her segregating Justin from the rest of the cast to further punish him in the public eye, when really this was all squared away behind the scenes and filming had progressed with no further issues according to Blake. So everything was squared away and nothing would have been publicized. But she just couldn't control herself. She had to punish him and humiliate him further. She's a sadist. It's like she has a humiliation fetish where she likes to emasculate men. But anyway, her doing this to Justin during the press tour and segregating him to make him look problematic was likely the impetus that got the ball rolling for all of the negative press surrounding the movie. If you remember, it all started after the premiere, in which Justin was weirdly segregated from everyone. Rumors of a feud spread like wildfire and led to people scrutinizing the cast more than they typically would, following which they easily found Blake to be tone deaf, opportunistic, and insufferable, all of which she factually is. And one of the starkest and most malicious lies Blake told in her lawsuit was about the CEO of Wayfair Studios, Jamie Heath. She insinuated in her complaint that he had been speaking to her about a porn addiction he had, which is patently false. Not only has he never had a porn addiction, but he has never spoken to Blake about porn, period, whatsoever. For her to conflate him in this accusation against Justin and Justin's vulnerable personal growth story, which she vilified him for, continues to illustrate how duplicitous her demands really were, and that they were all undergirded by total fabrications or distortions. Something I also found crazy was a text message Justin sent to Jamie Heath in which he was petrified to have the talk with Blake about her wardrobe on May 16th. So take note of that date. This is when Blake began to turn on Justin, not only for creative differences, but because she didn't like that he had relayed criticisms of her appearance from Sony and the public. After the weight comment and then with this is probably when she began taking note of everything he did and said to use it against him while being fake and still manipulating him and pretending to be his friend. They even provided evidence of some of the earliest negative comments about Blake's wardrobe, which are hilarious and totally accurate. Blake blamed Justin, pretending the criticism was all coming from him and not Sony and not the fans, because he wanted her to appear hot, which is just a lie. There is a fucking chasm of places to land between someone looking hot and someone looking like whatever the hell this is. In my last video, I said she looked like a recovering addict of some kind, and someone commented and said, "I find this offensive. I've never looked this bad." She looked objectively bad. And the fact that she couldn't see that means not only is she an impossible narcissist, but also that she has no vision and is incapable of accepting even the mildest bit of criticism, which you already know Justin presented to her in the most sugar-coated way the English language could possibly facilitate, because it is obvious he is a softy at heart who would never hurt anyone in a mean-spirited manner. He rose above so much abuse from this woman and still found it in himself to speak to her in a cordial manner, especially when she was taking over his edit. He just waved the white flag and gave up. Even when she put him in the basement of his own premiere, he still went out in public and praised this psychopath. He is not a bad person. The very fact that he cried during this meeting with Blake when he was trying to relate to her criticisms about her wardrobe, and the meeting which he told Jamie he was fucking terrified over because he didn't want to say the wrong thing, this all proves how sensitive he is. And I've been saying that from the beginning. He's a very sensitive man. So every day, this poor man and his company was trying to navigate a freaking minefield and dealing with this woman. If I was Blake and reading these text messages about how impossible and difficult I was, so much so that executives were constantly conferencing behind the scenes on how to deal with me and how to respond to me, not only would I be mortified, but I would be deathly afraid that I would never work again in Hollywood. You know, other production companies and studios are reading this like whatever star power Blake and Ryan could bring to a film is utterly undercut by their maniacal scheming and extortion. This looks so bad for them, no matter what the legal outcome is in court. They're both done. Blake and Ryan, that is. I think Justin will recover from this easily and go on to become a bigger star and filmmaker than he ever anticipated. You can just look at the multiple text messages of Justin and his team conferencing behind the scenes, even in pre-production. Before any complaints from Blake about Justin and sexual harassment, they were conferencing about her taking over the movie. She was monstrous from the beginning. That's why her claims of sexual harassment hold no weight. She's an awful person, and we have no reason to believe anything she says, especially because her so-called accounts of sexual harassment are riddled with unabashed lies and distortions.